Hi everyone. Welcome today. I've got a special guest with me here, coming to us virtually to Treaty One territory, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I'm here today with Abrah Arneson, herbalist and author from Gatineau, Quebec. Hi, Abrah.
Hi, Anishinaabe territory, unceded.
Thank you. Thanks for your territory acknowledgement. I'm really glad that we could find some time to get together today and connect virtually, because I really want to talk about your book. I want to talk about this. So just a quick note of introduction before we get into it. Abrah is a practicing herbalist. She has clinical practice based in Ottawa, Ontario, and is based in Gatineau, Quebec, where she has a robust apprenticeship program. And Abrah, you're also a really wonderful author. You've already authored a book called The Herbal Apprenticeship, The Herbal Apprentice Workbook. And now we've kind of transitioned into like a new realm where we're still talking about plants and herbs and all the good juicy things. But this isn't really like what we would call a traditional herbal in the way we might think of it in the Western sense, right? Where we have like the monographs and the actions and the chemistry and the energetics. Like, no, this is all story-based. It's very non-linear and yet perfectly sensible, like very accessible. And so I want to talk to you about your book today.
I like being sensible.
It's sensible, but not sensible. You know what I mean? Like
it's a bit magical too.
It is. It's a little bit magical. There's definitely like a sprinkling of fairy dust in there. And I just want you to talk to me about this book. It's called The Weaving Plants, Planets, and People. What inspired you to write this?
Well, you write a book over a period of years, so it changes, and especially the weaving really took on a life of its own.
What was it that planted the initial seed for you? You know, where was it? Was it the planets? Was it the plants? Like, what was that little seed? It
was the relationship between the plants and the planets, because I was looking for language of European herbal medicine beyond the humoral system. And I was looking for the language of the women who were herbalists in Europe. That's what I was looking for. And the humoral system seemed, and I'm more like the medical tradition as opposed to, you know, the woman's language who lived down at the end of the street, who knew how to cure eczema with herbs. Or, yeah, I was interested in finding the language of the women, and I don't know if I did, but I was curious about the relationship in herbal medicine with astrology. So I looked at the relationship between the stars and the planets in hoping to uncover some of that rich female tradition of European herbal medicine that essentially, for the most part, is lost.
An excellent point. And I'm glad you brought that up right at the beginning, because I feel like for some reason we don't really talk about this a lot in like Western herbalism or Western herb school or whatever. Like, we go back and we study the traditions, and we study a lot of like academic herbalism, literary herbalism, the herbalism of the scholars, whether that is astrology or plants or medicine or whatever it is that the origins were. But we often don't actually study paths of like folk tradition as much. And that, by that I mean like the plant use by women, that in families, like held in communities, that was used and shared and passed down through the generations, because that wasn't always, the academics and the women were not always on the same page, or maybe some of them kind of borrowed from the women, but we never really talked about it.
Like, for example, there is no, the only person who wrote about the menstrual cycle was Pliny the Elder, and I write about his writing in the weaving because it's it's really horrific what he writes about the woman's moon time, but there is no written record of hormonal irregularities. They didn't write about it.
Right, which is very interesting.
It's very women
that
were
would have been like one of the top.
Yeah, very few. Well, you wouldn't go to the doctor; you would go to the midwife,
right? Yeah,
or the woman at the end of the road. And now, I think in Italy there was a woman doctor in the 1500s that started one of the main medical schools. I can't remember reading that. So there were women in that stream as well, few and far between. But yeah, so that's just that, and then, yeah. And the first people who went were the midwives, right? The first people who disappeared were the midwives, and midwives still have a hard time.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah. So.
Very true.
Not to mention herbalists, but that's besides the point.
Yes. Also true, because there's sort of two, mainstream culture likes to consider fringe groups outside of the mainstream
unless
medicine
of course
model.
you go into the native community where
True.
people respond, there's a response, or you go into the Chinese community and there's into the Asian community, or the South Mexico, go into other communities. So it's really sort of the settler
European, I 100% agree with
you. That doesn't respond to plant medicine with joy, but with suspicion.
The suspicion. You're right. It's 100% true. If I go to Ukraine and look and see what the old women are harvesting and selling, it's herbs, right? And if you talk to older, Persian folks, like let's talk about herbs. So it is, because of course plants were a common language. They're a necessity. They were our original medicine for all cultures.
Yeah.
And somehow, though, you're right, like our sort of settler experience, and whether that's, if you're 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 generations here, and then you're removed from those traditions, then yeah, you are very steeped in, kind of like that mainstream medical model where herbs don't work on one hand, but on the other hand, but you can't use them with drugs or medication because they might influence one another. There might be contraindications, right? So what's that about?
Yeah. Well, let's not go down that road.
No, but I'm going on a path.
That thread.
Went on a tangent.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's get off that thread.
So,
but it is true. It is culture specific, that suspicion.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it's you're quite right. If we go and talk to different people in the Indigenous community, they're going to have a totally different perspective, right? So absolutely. So I know that you work in the herbal realm, like you make your living as a herbalist. I can see your apothecary behind you. I know you grow your own medicine, harvest a lot of medicine, make your own medicine, right? But you wrote this herb book, that's not really about herbs. Like it is, but it isn't. So, I was wondering if you can tell us, what it's about. Like, and I know that we are like, oh God, what's it about? Like, how can I distill it? But, what is it that you want people to sort of take away or have the experience of reading from this book,
I want people to take away from that book self-empowerment, the sense that they have the medicine inside themselves, that they don't have to reach outside themselves to find their medicine, and that the medicine is available around them. They just have to trust and look and see that they come from somewhere, that they belong somewhere, that there's reasons for the way things are right now in terms of the whole question of colonization, or not question, the facts of colonization and the harm it causes, the brutality it is. And I want people to walk away feeling connected to life, woven into life, and have a confidence in life, and not just their own person, but in life, in life in general, that we don't have to walk in fear. That's what I want. But I also want people to walk away with more questions than answers. I really don't want to be someone who says, I have the answer. I feel answers are extremely disempowering. They silence the inner knowings when the answer comes from outside. So it's really important to me to pose questions that can be mulled over and thought and transformed. Like, we are the alchemical vessel. This body is the alchemical vessel. And, it's interesting. I have a friend who makes spagyrics, and she's an amazing medicine maker. I am a mediocre medicine maker, but she's amazing, And so she was visiting me, and we were talking about, the spagyrics and the alchemical vessel and all that. I'm like, you got to look at this, though. It has to be a female tradition ultimately, because here they're like all these vessels. They're the female. They are representing the female body. Yeah. So, where am I going? I always go off on. I have to learn how to do interviews, Dionne. So I just want to. Yeah, we belong here.
Right. Yeah.
And the answers are the answers are in our hearts, in our bodies. Our bodies carry the memory. Our bodies are of earth. The earth is the memory keeper. Like, we're connected. We have 15% of our DNA is tree DNA.
That's pretty cool.
It's very cool. And so we don't have to be different than who we are. We are correct as we are, with all our weirdness and hurts and beauty and gifts. And also, a big part of the book is about bringing forward gifts. Because gifts are made for giving. So
that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it today, because there's so many themes kind of woven through the book, right? As the name alludes to, but so there's such a big conversation and awakening and learning, relearning, understanding right now of what colonization is, right? And how that colonizing point of view is steeped in literally like every part of our society. It's built into all of our systems, the way we see things. It's like that Jim Carrey movie, The Truman Show, where he's like a movie. Yeah, it's like he was like the character of a movie, but he didn't know it. But the whole set and system of his world was like, the whole architecture of the world was for him to like be playing this role, but he didn't know he was playing this role. Sometimes that's kind of how I see like colonization. It's everywhere, but we're not even aware that it's everywhere, right? Yeah. Many people are aware that it's everywhere, but the people who are sort of benefiting from that maybe are not, right? And so there's this longing where it's like, okay, so there's this, like, and what are the effects of colonization, and what role do we have to play in it? And then where do we like connect back to our ancestral culture, our ancestral traditions, our ancestral plants? You know what I mean?
Yeah, colonization for me has two words: greed and violence. And that's pretty much it for me. That's greed and violence. Yeah. And vaccine distribution right now is colonization, right? Like, you can see it. It's greed and violence. Places are unraveling because of COVID that are not as well developed as the place where I live, right? My privilege. So yeah, greed and violence. That's basically, to me, colonization. And it's like a demon that just destroys whatever's in its path. If it wants something, it destroys whatever's in its path. And that's how it is. And, you know, when you're raised in a colonized mindset, that lives inside us. We believe we're entitled to have what we deserve. And our privilege is our divine right. And if someone is in our way, they need to get out of our way, because that's what we deserve. It doesn't matter that that plastic is going to be floating around in the ocean and, you know, choking up some albatross. I want that water bottle right now.
Yeah.
And I'm too lazy to carry a proper water bottle. I can't get it together, you know, like that's colonization. The fact that you don't care, not caring in a deeply tender way about everything alive around you.
That's heavy, right? Like
very heavy.
It's the biggest unlearning of our time. It's the biggest teaching of our time. I think it's the most important.
And what a privilege to unravel this.
Mm-hmm.
Like what a privilege not to stumble around in this belief that because I was born here and the color of my skin, that I deserve to have whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
What a privilege to unravel that. You know, maybe we'll actually have an opportunity to really fall deeply in love with this planet and all the life it supports.
Because we need to, right? We need to. And I see so many parallels or opportunity for this growth and for herbalism and working with the plants to illustrate this teaching, because as we know, you know, that colonization mindset is all about land grabs, land assets, you know, like mine, take, you know?
Yeah.
So respect, right?
Yeah. So right now, you know, because it's July, it's kind of like, you know, every day I have to go out and get plants, sometimes for my garden. And I live in a fairly wild place. And so I do some wild crafting, but very specific plants like yarrow. Yesterday I harvested yarrow. And, you know, people say, oh, well, how do I know how much I'm going to need? So there's this sense that they need to take more because they don't know how much they're going to need, right?
Yeah.
But the whole, like the deep, deep nourishment of wildcrafting or foraging is you will receive what you need.
Mm.
It's not like you going out and getting it.
Right.
It's like, oh, there's enough for me to receive what I need and leave enough for others. And it's just that trust. Like if you can only pick, you know, a small jar of red clover flowers, that's enough. You might not, you won't need more. Like you'll receive what you need. You might not get what you want, but you'll receive what you need.
Yeah. Very true. Very
and
true.
You know, when the needs are fulfilled, life is so graceful.
Yeah, but it's necessary for us to be in that place of like trusting that is going to happen.
Yes, right? Yes, and that's it. That's where the roots are severed with colonization. Is, oh no, you can't really, you don't really belong here, or you got to watch out because, you know, or, you know, you have to be this way, otherwise.
Yeah, or yeah, we got to take all we can get because we don't know when we're going to get it next, or someone else is going to come and take it. So got to be first, you know.
Yeah, a lot of the settlers come from ancestors that were hungry.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Mm-hmm. They left their lands because of hunger.
Very true.
So there's a deep hunger within the settler ancestry, a very deep hunger. And I really tried to write about that hunger in the book and how that hunger drives the settler people of this continent.
Totally. And now that hunger is sort of transformed into this hunger for that connection to what it is that we left behind, what we lost.
Right? Yes. So then the cultural appropriation begins.
Yeah, exactly. right? Starving for that connection, starving for those rituals, starving for that that culture, that rich diversity, right? Just like starving for it, and then being like, well, who has it now, right? Who has it now? And then our indigenous brothers and sisters are like, whoa, like, yeah, no, like we've fought with our lives to hang on to what we have, and so like you need to be respectful about how you're approaching things.
But my experience, if I walk in respect with my indigenous brothers and sisters, the generosity, like, is profound. Like, talk about being able to teach generosity, right? Like, and a lot of people think that the teaching is like, oh, you use this plant for this, or you do this. No, it's how you walk through life. That's the teaching, right? Like, it's how you walk. It's not, oh, this ritual does this and this does this. It's not something outside. Like, you can use out the sort of the theater of ritual to set the mood,
right?
The set for the change within. But it is from within where the transformation comes. You can call the different directions or work with elementals or whatever it is. But the transformation still has to come inside. And that's how you walk through life. And so that's what I have had good fortune of spending time with two particular elders. And, I was very careful not to pick up the traditions because there are lots of reasons, but anyways, but what they taught me about walking through life, how to walk through life, that's what the real teaching I received was. Not like this prayer for this and that for that. It's like, this is how you walk.
That's profound.
It is. It's profound. And people get all like their knickers in a knot about like, oh, you have to do it this way or that way. And it's like, oh no, it's how it's what's in your heart. That's the same thing. If you're foraging, what's in your heart? If it's fear that you're not going to have enough, then you're going to take too much.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to pay attention. Oh yeah, the squirrel needs those nuts too.
Right. Yeah. I'm not the only one, that's relying on this food or this medicine. Like, we have to consider the whole community, Yeah. Absolutely.
Because we're only well when our whole community is well.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. That's like the decolonizing truth, is that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're not alone. Decolonization or colonization, the first thing it does is it isolates people, sticks them, puts them on boats away, puts them on reserves, puts them in camps. That's the first thing. Puts them in prisons, isolates them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in this together,
It's true. We have a journey to undertake. There's a lot of work to do, So. What did you come to learn? Did you come to some kind of understanding or realization of, connecting with your own cultural traditions, or, how do we address this hunger, right, from settler folks who are like, yeah, I don't know the traditions of my great grand. How do I? And I know that is a big part of like the journey for why it was that you, wrote the book. Did you come to any insights around that? I know this is all a personal journey that we all have to, walk this path and come to that understanding for ourselves.
Well, no. Not really. Well, I'm not there in the land of my ancestors. I'm here.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love that the Indigenous people of Canada, there's this, many people are embracing the pain that they have suffered for so long now, and I'm hoping it gives them the strength to really make their voices heard in a beautiful way. And so this morning I meditate in the morning, and I was sitting, and I was listening to the wind in the trees, and it was like, this is a language. I can hear this language waking up, it's like I can hear it. And it's not the language of my ancestors, but it's the language of the land I live on. Yeah. Language comes out of the earth, and language is based on the sounds of the trees or water, So I was just really moved by the sense of, I could almost hear the language emerging from the earth again and coming back. And yeah, I don't know. I guess mostly what I see myself as is a witness of this place.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know what it is like to have lived on a land of my ancestors for hundreds of years. I just don't know that experience. I never will. And even when I was writing those stories, part of me was like, well, I'm sure a Scottish person or a Celt who's like speaks Gaelic would be like going, what is she doing with this? So, part of me was like going, because I'm a settler.
Yes, but your experience is very, familiar to many other Scottish Gaelic settler folks, right? So
and hopefully Ukrainians as well.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Hopefully the whole community that moved over from Europe, and people who have lived here forever and ever. I hope it's meaningful to them, to the book.
Absolutely. How did you decide on the plants? How did you settle on the plants that you settled on for the book?
People always ask me that. I didn't really.
But it's kind of looking like, okay, I want to talk about something that really represents this planet. Or did you kind of which way did you go about it? Or are you like, oh no, I'm really in love with it, like the St. John's wort, or the Angelica,
No. Well, no, I just kind of felt like there was a story behind the plant. So I picked it. Like some plants I love so much, like St. John's wort, like you taught me that expression of St. John's wort, the Ukrainian herbalists say to not have St. John's wort in a formula is to not put salt in your bread, right?
Yeah.
That's such a, whoa, what a great expression.
Yeah.
And so yeah, St. John's wort I use all the time. Angelica I use a lot. I love Angelica. Actually, I grow Angelica and I can't actually harvest it because I'm like, I need to watch it go through its 2 seasons. I can't dig that out at the, so I have to go and get it from my friend who's willing to dig it.
Who sacrifices it for you?
Yeah, just, oh my God. And then, yeah, so like some of these plants, vervaine's another one I have this beautiful relationship with. Some of them, belladonna and mandrake, and it's so tedious, you Google mandrake and you get this horrible story about this poor black dog that's sacrificed for this plant, right? And I used to have a black dog. Oh, it's a terrible story. And I just think, and I have this black dog, and I just think, yeah, she would have sacrificed herself for this. Oh. Anyway, so I know. So, there has to be more to it than this black dog and Harry Potter screaming, right? So, yeah. Right, there has to be more. It's a magical plant, as with belladonna. And nettles totally took me by surprise where it went. And
so you're saying that you didn't actually come at it with the intention of being like, this is what I want to share about this plant. No. You kind of settled on the plant, and then there was a little bit of an element of exploration, or discovery.
What can I find? Yeah. And how does it come together, and how does it express that planet's energy, right? Like, how does this plant? Because with the planets, I'm not interested in cookbook astrology. And cookbook astrology is, oh, you're a Gemini, you like to talk a lot. Oh, you're Aquarian, you're really far out, and that's like cookbook astrology. And I wanted to, what the planets, what the planets actually are vibrations. We're talking about vibrational medicine, really. And that's another aspect of colonization. Is in colonization we see the world in particles and bits and pieces, where, as physics tells us, there's the vibration and what is it, the vibration and the point, or anyways,
even I don't know.
Yeah, the vibration.
I didn't prepare for that.
I think people who are more in align with nature see the vibration, the wavelengths, the threads. Threads are vibrations. Like that would be a metaphor for threads in a weaving are the vibrations. So the vibrations of the planets in the plant, not like, oh, this, some abstract. It's actually like energy lines coming, vibrating down through the cosmos and infusing the plant. And that plant has a particular affinity for that vibration. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good example.
Okay, so how does that vibration, for good or better, manifest in that plant? Like, how can I see that the vibration of Venus and violets? How can I see the vibration of Mars and hops, which doesn't carry any really of the aggressive, hot, prickly energy of Mars, but it's ruled by Mars, hands down.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I love that. And I loved following along through the story, through the chapters, like of each plant, and then like the weaving together of the story, whether that was like a folktale or folklore or, mythology, right? Greek or whatever predated it or was parallel to it. I thought that was, I really enjoyed that. It's very rare that I would sit down and read a herb book, like a Western herb book. Like, you want to read through herb monograph, like, like that's something you want to kind of like look at and refer to from time to time, but you're not going to sit down and like read it and be like, ooh, this is juicy. Ooh, like, oh, this is
what happens next.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is scary.
Valerian makes you see dead people. I already knew that, but like,
yeah, like, and Valerian's so tricky, it's like, I love Valerian, and I have a lot of respect for Valerian. Yeah,
it was wonderful. Yeah, did you have any
my mom doesn't know I put that in the book yet.
That's hilarious. Oh, so clearly she hasn't read the book yet. Come on, Mom.
I know, and I'm trying to decide. I'm going to a family wedding next week, and she said, make sure you bring lots of copies of your books so I can give them away. And I'm like, Mom, the point is to sell books, not for you to give away a bunch of books. But anyways, you can't tell. My mother's 85 now, so it's like, there's no point in trying to instill any logical conversation into the.
Well, if you tell her she's in the book, she might change her tune now.
She doesn't know yet, so I'm like, kind of like, oh, do I just say I forgot, or do I take the book and then see what she says? Yeah,
that's hilarious. That was obviously one of my favorite chapters. I had a lot of favorite chapters. Like, I was like, oh, it's mugwort, and then I was like, oh no, it's Valerian, and then it was like, oh no, it's comfrey, and every couple of chapters I'd be like, oh no, this is my new favorite.
That's good. I know. That's what I'm like. I like favorites too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people don't do favorites.
No, I can't. I'm the person that has like 10 favorites. Like I can't pick favorites. It's impossible. So when you're working with your plants, with your clients in your garden, like, are you thinking about, like, do you think about the planetary kind of archetypes, the energetic influences, like when you're sitting with the person in front of you? Like, does that kind of like factor in there, or is this more something that happens like, in your musings, in your relationship in the garden or your medicine making? Like, how does this kind of like, how do those intersect, or do they? or do they?
Well, they're both like I'm a clinician. Clearly, I'm a clinician. Like I'm very systematic in my work. I'm very,
For sure. I mean, you work a lot with like chronic infections, which is like,
oh,
the least poetic, flowery
really
affliction we can think of.
people, like a lot of the, and long sickness, and
Yeah.
like long histories of sickness, and how, the herbalist is the last person people go to. So yeah, long sicknesses and misdiagnosis, or a diagnosis and being medicated for that diagnosis, although that's not working for the person. But there's no other doorway now than, wait, my dog's friend just showed up. I gotta let her out. Okay, Lily, you hear that? She's sleeping. She's like,
Yeah, I heard you. You weren't like Lily, like
she's like,
probably was like, nah, I'm good. Oh my God. Bryn would be like, what, where, when, what's happening? Where are we going?
and it's like, oh, okay. So what were we talking about before Lily interrupted us?
Oh yeah, you were talking about your work as a clinician, and we were talking about.
So my work as a clinician, but then there's also that piece where you're talking to someone, and then this plant just comes, and you're like, it doesn't make sense. It's not linear, and you go, it's got. So it's sort of like that step between stepping in and out of the linear, and the wave and the particle, like working back and forth between them, and yeah, wave and particle. It's like that's how I work. I work back and forth between those two places, and I often want to know someone's birth date, and so I know their sign. I find that really helpful. Sometimes I'll get my husband to look at someone's chart if it's really yeah, a lot of time, yeah, especially if they're going through a lot of things are just coming in from all over the place. And
yeah.
so sometimes I look at charts, and yeah, I think about the plant, but it's also the planets. You can use it also as a language of energetics as well. And as like Jupiter rules the liver, and you can see Jupiter rule, like the liver is a very generous organ. It's to live, right? And it likes to live. So it's a very generous organ. So like, yeah. So, if someone's super generous and they can't get, can give them more of a Saturn plants, stabilize them better.
And what's the energy of Saturn? Would you say
well,
that's
Saturn's really interesting? Yeah, Saturn's really interesting. Saturn is about our limits.
Okay. Yeah.
But my favorite expression is, and I didn't put this in the book. Somehow it got taken out of the book along the way. Like you have to cut out so much when you write a book. My favorite is Saturn is the floor the child learns to walk on. That's Saturn. But, the other side of that is every limit there is the other side of it.
Yeah.
So there's always what's under the floor or on the other side of the wall. So limits, yeah. I have Saturn in Pisces, which is a terrible placement because Pisces is limitless, right? It just,
oh, interesting.
yeah, lots of boundary issues. I have lots of anyway. So that so for me, Saturn in Pisces is very like, and 12th house Saturn in Pisces. So it's very much like I'm always interested. Well, what's on the other side of the limit? That's really,
you want to push the limits a little bit.
Yeah, like what's on the other side there, but respect the limit at the same time, right? Like, yeah, Saturn is about limits, but it's also our foundation. It's the hard work you do in your life. It's for the hard work you do. It supports hard work. It supports deep learning. It supports, like if there's a planet that's going to support decolonization, in some ways it's Saturn, because it's like, no, you need the discipline to look at this, right? Like how many times I hear I'm talking about digging up the bones or these buried children, and I just want to look away. It's too much. And it's like Saturn is, I need to look at this as long as it takes. And that's Saturn energy. It's that discipline not to turn away, not to fall into, oh yeah, but we're all interconnected and isn't everything nice, and
right. And we're definitely seeing that, for whatever the planetary influences are happening right now, it's definitely like, it's like we can't look away, right? Like there's a momentum, and there's like, it's like, hey, we've been talking about this for so long. We've been saying this for so long. And for some reason, whatever that reason is now, that people are like, okay, we see it. We're listening. I don't know. I hope so. I hope it continues. Like, I hope the momentum continues, but I find it interesting, right? Where there seems to be like, some people seem to be waking up,
Hopefully.
I hope. Yeah, I know. So then I guess it was Saturn that was the last chapter then, with the comfrey. That I still get kind of goosebumps reading, when I think about that chapter, because everything is so beautifully written, and for the people that haven't read the book, and I hope this will inspire people to read the book. Abrah's really woven a lot of, like I said, folktale, lore, mythology, but then also like with her personal experience, like with the plants and the planets. And although you don't say it directly in the book, a lot of it was inspired by your working with the Indigenous community in Red Deer, right? With walking with our sisters.
I think a lot of this, like, because you sent me the questions for this interview, and it's like always like, oh, when did this begin? It could easily have begun in a sweat lodge, but then after I left Red Deer, I was living at a meditation retreat center, and I wrote all this poetry, like a lot of poetry about digging up bodies and opening up attic doors and bones tumbling out. And like, it was like I think really the first year of writing that book was a series of poems, and that was the journey. And so, people ask me, how do you write a book like that? How do you do that? And it's like, you just have to keep writing. And it's like, it comes out of you. It's not something did I write that book? Probably not. I had to cordon myself off and be disciplined and focus, but it came out of me. And I think really we have to, when in that creative mode, it's like a deep writing is like a deep listening exercise. And so when did that book start? I don't know. But I do know that we need to dig up those bodies.
Yeah.
For peace of heart, for all of us. And as a settler, right, we have to look at that cruelty in our minds. It's not enough just to, feel bad for the First Nations people. That's not like it. There's that inner peace where, okay, how have I walked with disrespect?
Mm-hmm.
Where has cruelty? Where has my greed overridden compassion? Those are like the real big questions that need to be asked inside each of our hearts,
Absolutely.
And hopefully the weaving is about that. Like, you can look at this. Like the story of Fenris is such a powerful story.
The wolf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really points directly at that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you want to share it really quickly? A retelling?
Okay, so Fenris comes from the Norse mythology, so northern Scandinavia. I don't know. Some ways I write a lot about Northern. Anyway, so stay on track, Abrah. Yeah, so Fenris was born, and there was a prophecy at his birth that he would bring the destruction of the universe. And so the gods got wind of this, and they decided that they were going to adopt him. And he would bring the destruction of the universe by killing Odin, who was the head god. So they adopted Fenris, and they took care of him. And then he started growing too big and was too smart. So they decided to tie him up, bind him. The word is bind. What are we bound to? That's the question Fenris asks, the story asks. What binds you? What invisible thread binds you? And so anyways, they bind him once, and he just like swipes the chain with his paw, and it's free, and it's like, ha 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 ha. So they get a bigger chain, and they bind him again. And he swipes it again, and he's like, haha, you can't bind me, I'm too strong, right? And now the trust between him and the gods is completely destroyed. He knows that they're out to colonize him, basically. Take his power. They want to take away his power, his person. Yeah, they want to control him. So they go to the dwarves, and they get this magic thread that's invisible. It's like a silk. It's like a thin piece of silk, and it's made with invisible things. I just find that so, like, it is the invisible things that bind us, you know, and things that don't exist. Like
tangibly, you mean?
Yeah, they don't exist, like chicken teeth.
Yeah. That literally don't exist.
Yeah, literally don't exist. These things don't exist, like mountain roots, you know, like things like this. I can't remember what they all are, but anyways. So he's Fenris, very smart. He senses a trap, and he says, no, I'm not doing this. And they say, oh, come on. And so he says, okay, if someone puts their hand in my mouth, I'll let you bind me. So the gods are like, well, maybe, how are we going to do? Because he knows they're not going to let him go. And he says, like, I'll take your arm. That way you'll want to let me go. So anyways, they sacrifice the god of war's arm or hand. He puts his hand in. Yeah, and Fenris is bound. And then he eventually unbinds himself and kills Odin, and the end of the universe comes, and he's killed by one of Odin's son. But it's that sense of, it's a powerful story. It's that, you know, because the gods have a position, they have a certain privilege, and they will protect it at all costs.
Yeah, exactly. And they see a threat to their privilege and their position.
Yeah. And, you know, the witch hunts in Europe happened at the same time that the wolves started really being exterminated from Europe. Like, there are no wolves in Europe.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel for sure. I mean, the witch hunts are a whole other thing, right? There's so many things that motivated it, and it's really interesting how that kind of swept across like Western Europe, right? And then a little bit into the, you know, the colonies, the new world, but that didn't really ever happen so much like that in Eastern Europe. So it's like, what was that? Like, what were they threatened by, right? Like, was it the brewing? Was it the healthcare? Was it the medical system? Was it I'm on your land? Was it, you know, there's a lot of
I think it was greed. I don't think they were threatened. I think that it was just pure greed.
Yeah.
I think it was just pure greed.
Yeah. Greed and violence.
Yeah, absolutely.
what is it that you would want people to take away about plants, their relationship with plants, about, oh, maybe I want to learn to be a herbalist, maybe I am a herbalist, what is it that you want people to take away about the plants specifically after reading your book? What would you hope for?
Oh, that there's so much more than you think they are. Yeah, and just be really curious, like, what are these living beings? Who are you? Yeah, and not get like try to pin them into little, anyone who gardens knows you can't pin down a plant.
No, I was having that conversation this morning with my valerian.
Oh, valerian. Yeah, well, valerian, you're definitely not going to pin down. Like, there's no way. You might be able to get the rose to grow in one place, but valerian, not going to happen. Yeah, good luck on that one, Dee.
I know. So I have valerian now, it's that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe time for a little mediumship.
Yeah.
You want to talk to.
Right? I know. I gotta be careful. Start having nighttime visitations. And if you want to know what that's about, you gotta read the book. Yeah. If you want to know why valerian helps you talk to dead people, you gotta read the book. But you're right, like they are so much more, and that, for example, that story is the perfect illustration, right, of a plant that you've used for years and years and years, right, in clinic with various different people, right? We know not all herbalists feel comfortable using valerian, or they think it's a little too tricky, and you have, and then you're like, well, this is new, this is something new that I haven't experienced before, or no, at least no one's told me about it, I haven't had feedback.
Yeah.
So there's always something to learn, right? There's always something to be uncovered. So I think that, if you're hoping to ignite people's curiosity about plants and to encourage them to dig deeper and, peel back the layers and make the connections and, see where all these things interconnect and intertwine. Yeah, I think you did a great job. I think you did a great job. It's a wonderful read. Yeah, it's really very nourishing, a very nourishing read, right? A very heart. It's a heart book, it's a heart book. It's not a book for the mind, it's a book for the heart. So yeah, and we need to nourish our heart in these times. We need to nourish our heart so we can do the work.
Yeah, and heart first and then mind too, right? Whereas we're usually like, that's, first the vibration and then the particle. Like, the heart is all about vibrations and the mind is all about particles. So first the heart, and then first the experience, the heart experience, and then, the mind's naming and how it's going to use that. There's no problem, right? So always heart first, and then I guess, back to the question of that's how first I always try to, heart first, and then mind, right?
Right. And I think that typically, when we're learning herbal medicine or studying herbalism, it's mind first.
Yeah. And maybe heart.
Heart maybe. Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I definitely love that you're encouraging people to, look at it and experience things a different way, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for your time today. So folks want to find your book, I believe they can do so on your website at abrahherbs.com. And of course you can order it online at Amazon as well. Yeah. So
yeah.
And you've got some events sometimes coming on with your books, like story sharing discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's kind of a talk about book. Like, I hope people talk about it. So I'm hosting August. I'm taking kind of backing out of a lot of stuff. So in September I'll start up. So in September we're talking about the weaving, and I've invited one of my friends who's a like a real astrologer to come, and so we're going to talk about the astrology in the book.
Very cool.
And then we're going to do one on healing. We're going to do the different themes.
Right.
This month we're doing the stories. And then my dear friend Penelope Boudreau, she's doing a book club, And the first book is The Weaving. So you can find that information on Everything Herbal, www.everythingherbal. And yeah. And then if you do read the book and you want to reach out to me because you have some insight or question, please do. I love hearing how people respond to the book. And if you really love the book and you buy it on Amazon, please leave a review. That would be great. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Abrah. Thanks so much for spending time together today. It's been a wonderful chat. I know that we tried to kind of corral the larger themes of the book into like a small time frame together. And I know there's so many other tangents and threads we could follow and explore. It's really hard to like contain it to one thing. So I appreciate, you just giving us some insight into your writing process and, what you're hoping people take away from it. And just thank you for this beautiful gift that you've, gifted to the world, to the plant world.
Well, thanks, Dee. It wouldn't have been possible without you. So,
thank you.
And the mugwort story is a dedication to you. You do
the Ukrainian herbalist.
Yes.
I know.
The Ukrainian herbalist is someone I know.
Thank you. Yeah, I really loved it. I appreciate the mention. It's a beautiful work, and I just want to shout about it and share it with everyone because it's a beautiful offering. It's not a typical her book. It has so much to offer. And the time that I think we needed. I think it's the perfect time to birth it into the world.
I know. That was lucky.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It came up out of me, right? Like I didn't ultimately.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for having me.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.